Hello again everybody, this is Craig Peters here from Soundiron, and in today's walkthrough we're going to be checking out the brand new David Oliver's drum kit. This is our newest collaboration with composer and multi-instrumentalist David Oliver. This library captures the sounds of a Pearl DLX drum kit recorded at the White House Studios in the UK. This drum kit was originally played and endorsed by legendary jazz drummer Art Blakey, and it's got a versatile and vintage sound that's really suitable for multiple genres and styles of music. This library comes with an extensive array of meticulously recorded drum samples and articulations that really let you craft realistic drum performances from swing and jazz to rock styles and many others. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start checking out David Oliver's drum kit. So after you install the library, you'll see that you have three different NKIs. There's the Pro version, which contains 16 round robins. There's the Lite version, which contains 8. And then there's the regular main NKI, which has 12. So depending on the way that you work or your system, you have a few different options to choose from. And there's also a folder for solo instruments as well, and we'll check that out later in the video. So right now I have the Pro version loaded up, so let's go ahead and start exploring this a little bit. So when you first load it up, this is what you're gonna see if you want to explore some of the different features, like the Remapper, which right here shows all of the different drums and how they're mapped on the keyboard. So we have a few different presets that we've included. So if you go up here to this map presets, you'll see that you have a few different options. You got your general MIDI, you got some for addictive drums. So if you're an owner of addictive drums or Get Good drums or even Superior drummer, you have a few different mapping options. So you can take any of those existing songs that use any of these programs, and then you can go ahead and load up this map, and whatever you have programmed should work. So I'm gonna go ahead and just load up the Superior drummer one, and then let's just go ahead and play through some of the sounds. And then while you're in the Advanced tab, you also have an option for filtering and arpeggiation. And this is really cool and something that you don't really commonly see in a lot of drum libraries. So it's a really fun feature, especially if you want to start getting really experimental and doing some really wild things you don't normally get to do with drums. So it's another added feature that you've seen in a lot of our other libraries, but we wanted to bring it into this drum library to really give you some other creative options to utilize. So since we have the Superior Drummer mapping loaded up, I wanted to go ahead and take some of those grooves from Superior Drummer and see how they sound with the library. So this is also using my own mixing with the routing that I did in Cubase, so I'm using my own plugins for this. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of how you can use some pre-existing grooves and your own EQing and mixing with this library. So let's go ahead and check this out. So to give you a little bit of an example of some cool stuff that you can do with the ARP and the filter, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the arpeggiator. I got this preset 8 loaded up. Now let's go ahead and hear how this sounds. I'm going to go ahead and set this to a 16th note triplet. Now let's go over here to the filter. I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to set this to LP6. Now let's go ahead to the source. I'm going to go ahead and turn this to graph. Let's go ahead and take this graph and just do like a little stair step type thing. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to this little invert button. I'm going to turn this on. Let's go ahead and set our reso to about around like 11 o'clock or so. See what we got. Now some other things you can do is you can go ahead and learn these to your mod wheel. I'm going to learn both of them. Now let's see what happens. So it's a really cool feature to mess around with if you want to take some of these drum sounds, which are normally used in more like jazz and rock style settings, and maybe do some kind of weird experimental electronica kind of stuff. So definitely something to mess around with, especially if you're wanting to just get really weird and creative with it. So going back to the Remapper page, one of the things that you can do too as well is you can create your own drum maps really easily. So if you want to just preview any of the drums, you can select this right here. So when you click, you can preview the different drum sounds. You can also select this MIDI. So the cool thing about when you select this is that down here, this corresponds to the different drums. So you'll see this change with every time you play a key. So if you want to know what type of drum it is and where it's mapped, this is how you do it. So above where you see the displays for the drums, so if you click here, you have the whole list of the different drums. And then down here, you have the type of articulation, whether it's the center of a hit, rim shot, that sort of thing. So up here, you have this drop down for global, per drum, and per articulation. And this allows you to really shape and get creative with how you use the different sound shaping controls for just really creating your own kind of interesting drum mappings and being able to pitch and pan different instruments. I usually like to do per drum, so that way if, let's say, you want to like pan your toms differently, you can go into there and then you can pan it here. You can also pitch them as well. And then right down here you have semitones and cents, so you can really, fine tune the tuning, or you can really pitch it down further by using semitones if you want to really pitch it down super low. So if we have our kick, you want to just pitch it down super low, and then here's it normal. Or you can do cents. So when you have it on cents and you put it all the way down, it's not as drastic. And then you also have controls for the volume as well as attack. So if you want to soften the attack of the snare a little bit, you can do that too. And then when it comes to the Remapper, if you want to, let's say, just take one of these away, you just go ahead over here, click the drum that you want, or if you find it here, and let's say you want to unmap that, you just have that selected, go over here to the unmap, click that, and then hit apply. So then you'll see that it now says NA and there's nothing applied to it. And then if you want to take this and let's say map it by key, you can select this right here. Let's say I want it all the way down here for some reason, right? Just go ahead and select that, and then it'll say apply. And then now your drum is all the way down here. But if, let's say, you make a change and you want to just go back, you just go over here, just select, Superior Drummer again. Now everything's the way that it was before. And you can also save these as well. So if you go over here, you'll see that you can rename them by double clicking and then hitting this little save icon, and then that will create your new map. All right, so now let's go ahead and start checking out the mixer page, and this is where a lot of the really cool, fun things start to happen as far as taking the sounds and shaping them how you want. So let's go over here. You'll see that you have this little rack of channels right here. You have for kick, toms, snare, hi-hat, ride, crash, splash, overhead, and room. Right now the overhead and room are turned off, so if you want to turn these on, you just go to these little solo buttons. So you can see now you got a little bit of that room and those overheads in there. So if we go over here and click on the snare channel, you'll see that you have a few different options to choose from. So you have this stereo right here, and what this is, it's a pair of TLM 103s on the snare and really provides a nice full sound. Or if you want to use it in the more typical way with a couple of 57s, on the top and bottom you can turn that off and you can have the top snare, which is using a SM57, and then you also have the bottom snare as well, which really has that nice rattle and that sort of extra bit of the snare that really helps give it a little bit of that pop and cut. So you can turn that up or you can turn it down. You blend the mix however you want it to be. Or you can also blend these as well if you want to use the stereo right here and then a little bit of that bottom mic. It really allows you to shape the sound how you want. So the other thing I want to talk about is the overhead and room channels, and they have this link feature right here. And the thing about this is it allows you to shape the overall blend and mix of how the instruments are fed into these channels. So if we have this link turned on and we go to our snare, you can shape the amount of snare that's going into that overhead signal, or you can just have this turned off and use your own blend of the overheads. So if you don't want a lot of overhead, you can do your own blends that way, and you can use these to create your own sort of mix within the mixer. Now, going back to some of these other controls above the fader, you have pan, you have send, and you have width. And these are really cool, especially for doing a little bit of that kind of post-production for the drums. So if you want to take your snare and make it a little bit wider and a little bit more, fuller in the stereo field, you can turn this up. So you can make it more super mono, or really give it that wide sound, which really helps kind of spread across the overall stereo field. I'm gonna go ahead and dial this back a little bit. And with these sends, what it does is these correspond to over here on this master area. So if I'm gonna go ahead and, let's say, turn on some space, right now you don't hear anything, but if I go over here and start turning up this send, I can individually feed a certain amount of this reverb to the snare by itself. And then we got the snare with all of this reverb. So what's great about this is it allows you to have more control over how much you feed each kit piece into these effects. And there's also some delay as well. So this basically works for the delay and the reverb. So if these are both on, you're gonna be feeding into both of these. So just remember that. So you can see there's that delay going on and the reverb. So we can turn this off and just have a bunch of snare going into these the reverbs and delays. So I'm gonna go ahead and dial this back a little bit. So when you have delay selected right here, you'll see that you have these different controls for the delay as far as the feedback and how it works. And then you have a few different modes that you can choose from. So we have like some modern, which is what you were hearing already. And then we have some analog tape, some vintage sound. So we can have a little bit of that vintage delay. If we want to keep this synced, we can just select this little lock right here. So it'll sync with your DAW, which is great for just having those delays work in time. We can increase the feedback. We can bring that back. Got some depth. And then you also have stereo or ping pong as well. So let's go ahead and try the ping pong. So you can hear it kind of going back and forth. As well as stereo. Let's go ahead and bring a little bit of kick into this. Turn this up a little bit more. Let's go ahead and give the hi-hats a little bit of this as well. So you can almost get that kind of big arena rock sort of sound with using a bunch of these delays and reverbs too. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the delay and go back to the space, and here you have a couple different options from convolution, plate, and algorithmic. So we have algorithmic loaded up. Let's go ahead and check out the convolution. You'll see very similar settings with our Cathedral. You've probably seen this in Hyperion Brass and Hyperion Strings, as well as some of our other libraries. So we can click this. You'll see you have a bunch of different options to choose from. You got the effects long, which are some of my favorite for those more like really cool effecty types of reverbs. And then we can go over here and check out some of these different sounds. There's a bunch to choose from. We got pre-verse. Let's go ahead and check that out. Or we can go ahead and check out some of the effect shorts. Let's go ahead and check out the OG, which is really cool. And you can go ahead and increase the size. And then the other thing I want to talk about as far as the different channels go is you have this master channel right here. And this is pretty much, think about it as like your drum bus. And you can feed all of the drum pieces into the sends as well as pan them and even add some width as well. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to turn these off so we have nothing fed into the space. And let's go ahead and select that algorithmic again. So you can see it's just dry. Now if we go to the send on the master channel, so this will be affecting your overall drum kit. Or going back to that width control that I was showing you earlier, you can do that for the whole kit as well. So I don't usually like to do this too much because it's a pseudo width control. Think about it like if you use any kind of spatial widener plugins. If you go a little bit too hardcore on them, it'll start to make the sound a little phasey. So using this just a little bit really goes a long way. So I'm gonna go ahead and dial this back. Add a little bit of that send. So some other stuff that I want to show you is down here in this little effects area. So this is for the routing. So if let's say we go to our kick and we want to do some different individual routing of each drum channel, you can do that within your DAW. So if you have it set to where you have multiple stereo outputs loaded in Contact, you can go over here and select the different ones. So you can mix this yourself using your own plugins in your DAW, and we'll have some future videos showing you how to do that as well. So you have the routing. So whenever you have routing selected on each channel, you'll see the different mics if they're available, and then the routing right over here. So this is where you'll go ahead and route each drum group to a different track in your DAW. And then you also have these different effects as well. So let's go ahead and select our snare. Right now, we don't have any effects. I'm actually gonna go ahead and turn this send off. And then if we click right here, you have some different slots where you can add your own effects chain. So if we click this, you'll see a drop down. You got compressor, limiter, transient master, tape saturation. So if you want to add a limiter, you can do that. Or if you want to do some compression, you also have some EQ if you want to shape the sound. So you have the low gain, and then the low frequency, and then you have the low mid gain, and then the low frequency. So for the low and the high, you'll see that you have options for the frequency, the gain, and then there's also this bell icon right here. So when the bell icon isn't loaded up or lit, basically what it is, it's a shelf. So it's either a high or a low shelf, or if you select bell, then you can do a little bit more of a bell curve and shape the sound a little bit more specifically. So right here, if you want to select the frequency of the snare, you can go ahead and turn this up so you can hear it. So let's say you want to find a frequency that you don't really like in the snare. So let's say you don't like that, you want to take some of that out. You want to boost a little bit of the low around, let's say you want to boost around here. And then if you want to add a little bit of brightness to the snare, you can go over here and turn up the high gain. We can go ahead and let's find the frequency. Let's say around here I want to add a little bit of that bright smack to the snare. So you can pretty much build your own chain. If you want to have a compressor over here, you can do that. And then on this one, you can have maybe some tape saturation if you want to saturate the snare a little bit. And then if you want to A/B the comparisons of what you're doing, you can do that over here. So if you want to turn the EQ off and hear the difference. And this is super useful, especially if you're trying to A/B the different changes that you're making to see if you really like what you're doing. And then if you have a specific effects chain for each individual drum, you can go ahead and just go over to this folder icon right here, and you can save and name your preset and use it for any other drum, or just use it for a snare. So let's say you have a whole kit designed and you like how it sounds, but you want to change the snare chain, you could just go over here and just load it up for that specific snare. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, there's also a folder for individual solo instruments as well, and right now I have the snares loaded up. Now you'll see that this looks a little bit familiar to our other template that you've seen for the different layers. So you have mic 1, you have mic 2, mic 3, as well as an aux, which has some sub-synth and other types of effects as well. So if we go here, you'll see that you have the close top, the pearl close top, so you have a few different kit pieces as well as the sub-synth. So let's go over to mic 1, and you'll see that we have the all Mapex snare loaded up. So this library isn't just multi-sampled with different velocity layers, there's also some different cool articulations that are recorded, like real actual fills and that sort of thing. So if we just play through the all Mapex snares, you'll see that we get to cycle through some of these different articulations. And by having access to some of these performances that are recorded this way, it's a great way to pepper these into your different drum programming so you can really get some realistic performances. And with this, you'll see that you have the effects rack, and this is a new effects rack. That's something that we've been working on, and it's really cool. There's a lot of really cool options. So let's go ahead and play through some of these different reverbs. We can go ahead and turn this on. We also have some other stuff as well, like some different amps. So if we go over here, we can load up an amp. Let's go ahead and turn this down a little bit. So you can get some really gritty drums, or we can go over here. There's also some chorus. And then you also have some other different types like you've seen in the master presets for the different delays. So you have modern, analog, tape, vintage, and diffusion. So let's go ahead and select this and then add a little bit of delay. We got ping pong, some saturation. You can sync this as well. So definitely experiment with the new effects rack. There's a lot of fun to be had here. You can get really experimental and into sound design territory pretty quickly. So definitely experiment with this. And then another thing I want to mention is that you have this advanced tab up here, which I'm sure you've seen before in plenty of our other walkthroughs. So you have an arpeggiator and a filter and some LFO. So we can do some arpeggiation here. We can go into this mic 2. Let's turn this on. We can turn an arpeggiator on here too. So right now this is set to Gliss. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to Arp. Let's go ahead and find a preset. Let's set this to eighths. Apply. You can turn on some filtering. You can set this to mod wheel. And then we could also add some width to these as well. So let's go back to that effects rack, and I'm going to go ahead and load up an algorithmic reverb. Let's turn this on. And then the next thing I want to show you is how you can utilize the X fade to do a little bit of crossfading between some of these different sounds. So I'm going to go ahead and set mic 1. I'm going to leave that at none, and I'm going to go to mic 2, and I'm going to set this to layer B, and then I'm going to learn this to my mod wheel. So you can see just by utilizing a few of the different features within the library, you can get some really interesting movement and cinematic type sounds going. So if you're just, working on a score and you want to have a little bit of just kind of intrigue and movement, with some other elements kind of fading in. You can do that really easily. So let's say you got all your effects changed out in and levels and everything set exactly how you want it, and you want to save this preset to use at a later time. You just go over here and you just click on this little disk icon. But before that, I want to go ahead and show you how you can set this up so you can get all of your different folders into a specific location, because when you click this, it's going to go to this location right here. So what you want to do is go into your data folder, which has the mixer, mappings, and effects folders. Let's go ahead and copy these and paste them over here. Let's go ahead and hide that. And then now what you can do is you can go ahead and click this disk icon. If it's a mixer preset, you can go ahead and open this up. Name this something like my new preset. And then there you go. And then you can load that up any other time you have a session that works for that specific sort of sound and tone. All right, so that about wraps up this walkthrough for David Oliver's drum kit. If you'd like to learn more about this library or any of the other collaborations we've done with David, like Rhythmic Odyssey and Shake, make sure to go to soundiron.com. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and stay up to date on future videos like these, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.